Amidst a dilapidated market at the end of the street, a young man stood frozen in panic, his eyes red as he realized the $85 meant for his school tuition had vanished. Without that money, his stepfather would throw him and his mother out of the house. Desperate, he scanned the crowd for help, but everyone ignored him until an elderly black woman selling tomatoes approached. She quietly helped him gather his scattered belongings and handed him every dollar she had. Deeply moved, Ethan vowed to repay her someday. She only shook her head and told him to study hard. Little did she know that 10 years later, that promise would return in a way no one could have imagined. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from. And subscribe, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The afternoon sun beat down on the cracked asphalt as Ethan ran through the crowded farmer's market, his sneakers slapping against the pavement with each desperate step. His trembling hands frantically searched through his backpack again and again, pulling out crumpled papers, a half-eaten sandwich pencils, everything except what he needed most. The tuition money was gone. No, no, no. His voice cracked as panic seized his chest. He dumped the entire contents of his bag onto the ground, ignoring the annoyed looks from passing shoppers who had to step around him. His fingers trembled as he sorted through everything one more time, but deep down, he already knew the truth. The $85 his mother had given him this morning, money she'd saved for months by skipping meals and taking on extra cleaning jobs, had vanished somewhere between home and school. Ethan's vision blurred with tears as the weight of what this meant crashed down on him. He could still hear his stepfather's slurred words from last night, still see the way the man had grabbed his mother's arm hard enough to leave marks. "If that little brat doesn't bring back a receipt tomorrow, you're both out on the street. I mean it this time, Margaret. I'm done carrying you two." The young man pressed a shaking hand over his eyes, trying to stop the tears, but they came anyway. Hot and shameful, they streaked down his dirt-smudged cheeks as he knelt there on the ground, surrounded by his scattered belongings and the indifferent crowd flowing around him like water around a stone. Nobody stopped. Nobody even slowed down. A woman in expensive sunglasses nearly stepped on his hand as she passed, pulling her designer purse closer to her body, as if poverty might be contagious. An older man in a business suit glanced at him briefly before quickly looking away, his pace quickening. Ethan had never felt so invisible, so utterly alone in a sea of people. "Hey, sweetheart." The voice was gentle, worn smooth by years of hardship, but still somehow warm. Ethan looked up through his tears to see a black woman standing over him, concern etched deep into the lines of her weathered face. She was probably in her 60s, wearing a faded flower print dress that had been washed so many times the colors had turned pale. Her hands were stained with something red tomato juice, he realized, and there was kindness in her tired eyes that made something in his chest loosen just slightly. "Come here, baby. Come on now." Emma Williams reached down and helped the boy to his feet, her calloused hands surprisingly gentle as she guided him away from the flow of foot traffic toward her small vegetable stand. The setup was humble, just a folding card table covered with a plastic tablecloth, a few wooden crates holding tomatoes of varying sizes, and a battered metal cash box that had seen better days. A handmade sign propped against one crate read, "Fresh tomatoes, $3/LB" in uneven lettering. Emma pulled a faded handkerchief from her dress pocket and carefully wiped the tears from Ethan's face. The gesture was so maternal, so tender, that it almost made him start crying again. "Now then, you want to tell me what's got you so upset? You hurt somebody bothering you." Ethan shook his head, unable to meet her eyes, as shame burned through him. He didn't want to tell this stranger about his problems, about his family's poverty, about his violent stepfather. But there was something in her patient silence, in the way she waited without judgment, that made the words tumble out before he could stop them. "I lost my tuition money." His voice was barely above a whisper. $85. It was for school. My mom saved for months, and I don't know where it went. I checked everywhere, but it's just gone. And if I don't bring home a receipt, my stepdad is going to—" His voice broke, and he couldn't finish the sentence. Emma's expression shifted, a flash of understanding and pain crossing her features. She'd seen that look before in her own mirror during darker times. She knew exactly what that unfinished sentence meant. "Your stepdad, he got a temper on him." Ethan nodded miserably, still staring at the ground. "And your mama, she working?" "She lost her job 3 months ago. She's trying, but nobody's hiring. And Frank, that's my stepdad, he drinks. And when he drinks, he gets mean. And last night, he said, if I don't pay for school today, he's kicking us out. The words rushed out in one desperate breath, and saying them out loud somehow made everything feel more real, more terrifying. Emma felt her heart crack a little wider, an old familiar pain that never quite went away. She looked at the scared white kid with his secondhand clothes and desperate eyes, and she saw every child she'd ever tried to help, every person the world had forgotten or given up on. She saw herself 30 years ago, alone and afraid, with a baby to feed and nowhere to turn. Without a word, she turned to her small cash box and opened it. The afternoon's earnings sat inside a small stack of bills and a handful of coins that represented an entire day of standing in the heat, calling out to customers haggling over prices. $85. That was all of it. Every single cent. Emma's hands hovered over the money as her mind raced through calculations she'd done 1,000 times before. The market charged $40 a month for her table space, and she was already 2 weeks late. Her landlord wanted $70 for the room she shared with her granddaughter, Sophia, due 3 days ago. That left nothing for food, nothing for Sophia's asthma medication, nothing for the bus fare she'd need to get to the free clinic when her arthritis got too bad. She thought about Sophia, just 7 years old, waiting for her at home in that cramped room with the leaking ceiling and the broken heater. The girl had gone to bed hungry last night because there'd been no money for groceries. She'd probably go to bed hungry again tonight. Emma closed her eyes, and in her mind she could see her own childhood, the nights spent cold and afraid, the gnawing emptiness of prolonged hunger, the shame of wearing clothes that didn't fit while other kids laughed. She remembered the one teacher who'd bought her a winter coat, the neighbor who'd sometimes left food on their doorstep, the small kindnesses that had kept hope alive when everything else seemed dark. She opened her eyes and looked at Ethan again, really looked at him. He was shaking slightly, his thin shoulders hunched as if bracing for another blow from life. He couldn't have been more than 18 or 19, still barely older than Sophia. Too young to carry this kind of fear. "How old are you, baby?" Emma asked softly. 19, ma'am. 19. Lord have mercy. Just 19 years old, Dot. Growing up in poverty meant Ethan had entered school several years late, always trying to catch up with classmates much younger than him. Emma made her decision in that moment, even as a voice in her head screamed that she couldn't afford this, that she had her own granddaughter to think about, that charity began at home. But she'd never been good at listening to the practical voice. Her heart had always been louder than her common sense. She scooped up all the money from the cash box, every last dollar bill and coin. Her hands were steady as she folded the bills, neatly smoothing out the wrinkles with care. This wasn't just money anymore. It was hope. It was kindness. It was the universe giving her a chance to be the person she'd always tried to be, despite everything trying to beat it out of her. Here. She pressed the money into Ethan's small palm, closing his fingers around it. This should cover what you need. Ethan stared at the money in his hand, then up at Emma, his eyes wide with disbelief. I can't take this. This is your money. You need it. Don't you worry about what I need, baby. You get yourself to that school office and you pay that tuition. You understand me." Emma's voice was firm but gentle, the tone of someone who'd made up her mind and wouldn't be argued with. "But I don't even know you, and you're just giving me all your money. Why would you?" Ethan's voice cracked again, overwhelmed by the incomprehensible generosity of this stranger. Emma reached out and cupped his face with both hands, her tomato-stained fingers gentle against his tear-streaked cheeks. "Because somebody helped me once when I had nothing. Because you're still so young, and you shouldn't have to carry this kind of weight. Because it's the right thing to do, simple as that." She paused, making sure he was listening. "Now you listen to me good. You take this money you pay for your school, and you promise me something." "Anything." Ethan whispered, tears flowing freely now, but different than before. Not tears of desperation, but of something else. Something like hope mixed with overwhelming gratitude. "You promise me you'll study hard, you'll make something of yourself, you'll be good and kind, and when you get the chance someday, you'll help somebody else who needs it. Can you do that for me?" Ethan nodded so hard his whole body shook. "I promise. I swear I promise. But how can I ever pay you back? I don't even know your name." Emma smiled a real smile that softened all the hard lines worry and poverty had carved into her face. "My name is Emma Williams. I'm here at this market most days selling tomatoes when the good Lord provides them. But you don't owe me anything you hear. You just remember what I told you. Study hard, be good, and help others when you can. Emma Williams, Ethan repeated, committing it to memory like a sacred oath. I'll never forget you, Miss Emma. Never. I'm Ethan Morrison, and I'm going to pay you back someday. I swear it. You just take care of yourself and your mama, Ethan Morrison. That's all the payment I need. Emma gave his shoulder a final squeeze, then gently turned him toward the market exit. Now you get going before it gets too late. And Ethan, she waited until he looked back at her. You're going to be just fine, baby. I can feel it in my bones. You're going to do great things. Ethan wanted to say more to somehow express the tidal wave of gratitude and relief crashing through him, but words felt inadequate. Instead, he clutched the money tight to his chest and ran his sneakers pounding the pavement again, but this time carrying hope instead of despair. Emma watched him disappear into the crowd, his lean figure weaving between the afternoon shoppers until she couldn't see him anymore. Only then did she allow herself to look back at her empty cash box, at the few tomatoes that remained unsold on her table, at the reality of what she'd just done. Her hands trembled slightly as she closed the metal box with a soft click. Sophia would be hungry tonight. The landlord would be angry tomorrow. The market manager would probably take away her spot by the end of the week. But somehow, despite all of that, Emma felt lighter than she had in years. She'd done the right thing. She knew it in her soul the same way she knew her own name. Sometimes the right thing was also the hard thing, and you just had to have faith that it would work out somehow. Emma began packing up her remaining tomatoes, placing them carefully into a cardboard box. The market would close soon, and she had a long walk home ahead of her. As she worked, she found herself humming an old gospel song her mother used to sing, something about faith and grace and the Lord providing. She didn't know it then, but the universe was already setting things in motion. The act of kindness she'd just performed was like a stone thrown into still water, and the ripples would spread further than she could ever imagine. For now, though, all she knew was that she'd helped a child in need, and somehow that made everything else feel bearable. The front door slammed behind Ethan as he burst into their small apartment, breathing hard from running the whole way home. Margaret looked up from the kitchen table where she'd been sitting motionless for the past hour, her cold coffee forgotten in front of her. Ethan, what are you doing home? It's only 3 o'clock. She stood quickly, fear flashing across her tired face as she took in his flushed cheeks and the way his hands trembled. He pulled the crumpled receipt from his pocket and held it out to her. I paid it, Mom. The tuition. I got the receipt. Margaret stared at the paper like it might disappear if she blinked. Her hands shook as she took it from him, reading the words over and over. I don't understand. This morning you lost the money. How did you? She stopped, her expression shifting to something harder. Ethan, where did this money come from? A lady at the market gave it to me. The words tumbled out in a rush. I was crying because I'd lost the money, and she saw me, and she asked what was wrong, and when I told her, she just gave me everything she had. Her name is Emma Williams, and she sells tomatoes, and she was so nice, Mom. She said somebody helped her once, and she was paying it forward. Margaret's face went pale. She gripped his shoulders, her fingers digging in too tight. A stranger gave you $85 just like that. It was all the money she had from selling vegetables all day. I tried to say no, but she wouldn't take it back. She told me to study hard and be good and help other people when I could. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes again, but this time from the overwhelming gratitude of what this woman had done. Mom, we have to find her. We have to thank her and pay her back. Margaret pulled him into a fierce hug, her own tears starting to fall. Yes, we'll go right now before your father gets home. They practically ran to the market holding hands the whole way. Margaret's heart pounded with urgency, and something else, the crushing weight of knowing that someone had sacrificed everything to save them, a stranger who had no reason to care, but had cared anyway. By the time they reached the market, the late afternoon sun was casting long shadows, and most vendors were packing up. Ethan led her through the aisles, searching frantically for the simple tomato stand with its faded tablecloth and hand-lettered sign. They walked the entire market twice before accepting what was becoming painfully clear. The spot where Emma had been was completely empty. She was right here, I swear. Ethan's voice cracked with desperation as he pointed to the bare patch of asphalt. Margaret grabbed the arm of a nearby vendor who was loading boxes into his truck. Please, do you know what happened to the woman who was selling tomatoes here, Emma Williams? The man barely glanced at them. Market management cleared her out this afternoon. She was behind on her booth rental. They do sweeps sometimes when people can't pay up. He climbed into his truck and drove off without another word. The information hit Margaret like a punch to the chest. This woman had given them her last dollar, and because of that kindness, she'd lost everything. The weight of that sacrifice made it hard to breathe. She steadied herself against a pole, one hand pressed to her mouth as the guilt threatened to overwhelm her. They walked home in silence, both lost in the impossibility of what had happened. When they turned onto their street and saw Frank's truck already parked outside, Margaret's stomach dropped. She pulled Ethan to a stop before they reached the building. "Listen to me carefully. When we go inside, hand him the receipt immediately. Don't explain anything. Just give it to him and go straight to your room. Let me handle this." The apartment was thick with tension the moment they opened the door. Frank stood in the living room, his face flushed red from drinking, his eyes bloodshot and mean. "Where have you been?" Ethan stepped forward and held out the receipt with both hands. Frank snatched it away, studying it with narrowed eyes. For a moment, Margaret dared to hope he'd just accept it and let them be. Then his expression twisted into something ugly. "Where'd you get this money?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "A woman at the market gave it to me," Ethan said. "She was really kind, and a woman just gave you $85. Frank turned to Margaret, his voice dripping with accusation. "You expect me to believe that you think I'm that stupid? It's the truth, Frank. We went back to find her, but she was already gone. Her name was Emma Williams, and she helped our son because she's a good person." Margaret kept her voice steady even as her heart raced. "Emma Williams," Frank repeated mockingly. "Real convenient that she's disappeared, isn't it? Real convenient that I can't verify this little story." He crumpled the receipt in his fist and threw it at Margaret's face. "I know what you are. I know you've been getting money from someone else, probably meeting up with him behind my back." "There is no one else," Margaret's voice broke. "There's never been anyone but you, no matter how much I sometimes wish." She stopped herself, but it was too late. Frank's face went purple with rage. "Get out." His voice dropped to that terrifying quiet that always preceded violence. "Both of you, get out of my house right now." "Frank, let's talk about this in the morning when—" "I said get out." He grabbed a lamp and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall just above Ethan's head, raining ceramic pieces across the floor. "Take your lying mouth and your brat and get the hell out." Margaret didn't waste time arguing. She grabbed Ethan and rushed to their rooms, throwing whatever they could into bags with shaking hands. Behind them, Frank's destruction of the living room echoed through the apartment furniture, crashing glass, breaking his incoherent rage about betrayal and disrespect. They made it out the door and down the stairs before he could block their way, his screaming following them into the street. 2 blocks away, Margaret finally stopped sinking onto a bus stop bench as reality crashed over her. They had nowhere to go. She checked her wallet with trembling fingers. $12. That was everything they had in the world. "Mom, I'm so sorry." Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. "This is all my fault." "Don't you dare." Margaret pulled him close despite the cold settling around them. "Your stepfather is the problem. He's always been the problem." They sat there as darkness fell, just 2 more invisible people in a city full of them. Margaret's mind raced through their non-existent options while Ethan pressed against her side, silent tears streaming down his face. The autumn night grew colder by the minute. "Ma'am, excuse me." Margaret looked up to see a homeless woman standing in front of them, pushing a shopping cart loaded with her possessions. Her gray hair was matted and her clothes were worn, but her eyes were kind. "I don't mean to bother you, but I've been watching and you look like you could use some help. You got somewhere to go tonight." Margaret shook her head, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "There's a church 3 blocks that way. They open the basement when it gets cold. It's not much, but it's warm and safe." The woman paused, studying them both. "You hungry, kid?" Ethan glanced at his mother before nodding. The woman reached into her cart and pulled out a wrapped sandwich. "Here, it's from the convenience store, but it's still good." She handed it to Ethan, then turned back to Margaret. "You got any money?" $12. The woman nodded slowly, then pulled something from her coat pocket, a wrinkled lottery ticket. "Take this. I bought it last week, but never checked if it won anything. Probably worth nothing, but who knows? Maybe you'll get lucky. Lord knows you need some luck right about now." "I can't take this," Margaret protested. "Sure you can. Consider it payment for treating me like I'm human. Most people don't even see me anymore." The woman pressed the ticket into Margaret's hand before shuffling away with her cart disappearing into the shadows before Margaret could thank her. Margaret stared at the dirty creased lottery ticket. The idea that it could be worth anything seemed absurd, but she folded it carefully and tucked it into her wallet anyway, then split the sandwich with Ethan. They ate in silence, watching the city lights come on one by one. 3 days later, after spending nights at the church shelter and days trying to figure out their next move, Margaret finally remembered the lottery ticket. She pulled it out while Ethan was at school, more to distract herself from their hopeless situation than from any real expectation. She walked to the convenience store and handed it to the clerk, barely paying attention as he scanned it. The machine made a sound. The clerk's eyes went wide. "Ma'am, you need to sit down." "What why?" "This ticket just won $2 million. Margaret's legs gave out. She grabbed the counter to keep from falling as the clerk's words echoed in her head, impossible and surreal. $2 million. She'd gone from homeless to a millionaire in the span of a single moment, all because a stranger had shown her the same kind of kindness that Emma Williams had shown her son. When Ethan came home from school that afternoon, Margaret was sitting on the church steps with tears streaming down her face. He ran to her in panic, thinking something terrible had happened. She pulled him close and whispered in his ear, "Baby, we're going to be okay. We're going to be more than okay. And the first thing we're going to do is find Emma Williams and change her life the way she changed ours." The same afternoon that Ethan received his miracle, Emma Williams stood in front of her market stall and watched two men in municipal uniforms dismantle everything she'd built. They worked efficiently, folding up her table, stacking her crates, clearing away the plastic tablecloth that had served her for 3 years. Her remaining tomatoes sat in a box at her feet, already starting to soften in the heat. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Williams." The market manager stood to the side, his clipboard tucked under his arm, his expression professionally sympathetic. "You're 2 months behind on your booth fee. We've got a waiting list of vendors who can pay. It's just business." Emma nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She wanted to explain that she'd had the money just this morning, that she'd been planning to pay at least part of what she owed. But what was the point? She'd made her choice when she'd given that money to Ethan, and she didn't regret it. She couldn't regret it, even as she watched her livelihood disappear into the back of a municipal truck. When the men finished and drove away, Emma picked up her box of tomatoes and started the long walk back to the room she shared with her granddaughter Sophia. The box grew heavier with each block, and by the time she reached her street, her arms were shaking from the effort. She was 63 years old, and her body reminded her of that fact every single day. She knew something was wrong the moment she saw her belongings piled on the sidewalk outside the building. Mrs. Chen, her landlord, sat on the front steps with her arms crossed her face, set in that expression Emma had learned to recognize the look of someone who'd run out of patience. "Mrs. Chen, please. I know I'm behind, but I'll have the money soon. Just give me 1 more week." "You said that 3 weeks ago, Emma." Mrs. Chen stood up, straightening her spine as if preparing for a fight. "I have my own bills. My own family. I can't keep giving you extensions when you have nothing to give me." Sophia appeared in the doorway behind Mrs. Chen, her small face crumpling when she saw their possessions on the street. The 7-year-old clutched her worn teddy bear to her chest, understanding flooding her dark eyes, even if she couldn't quite process what it meant. "Grandma." Her voice was so small, so frightened. Emma's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces, but she kept her expression calm as she set down the box of tomatoes and opened her arms. Sophia ran down the steps and buried her face in Emma's worn dress, her small body shaking with silent sobs. Emma held her tight one hand, smoothing down the child's braided hair, whispering reassurances she wasn't sure she could keep. "It's going to be okay, baby. Your grandma's going to figure something out." But as the sun began to set and Mrs. Chen went back inside, closing the door firmly behind her. Emma wasn't sure how she could make that promise true. She had no money, no job, nowhere to go. She gathered their belongings, 3 bags of clothes, some cooking pots, Sophia's school supplies, her Bible, and a cardboard box with their important papers, and started walking. They ended up at a small park where Emma knew they could sit without being immediately chased off. She used the last few dollars she'd found in her coat pocket to buy Sophia a small carton of milk and a banana from a corner store. The child ate mechanically, her usual bright chatter replaced by a haunted silence that was somehow worse than crying. "Grandma, Where are we going to sleep tonight? Emma looked at the darkening sky and felt panic rise in her chest. She thought of the women's shelter across town, but she knew from experience it would be full with a waiting list. She thought of the churches, but most closed their doors at night. She thought of her few friends, but they were all struggling just as hard as she was, living in tiny rooms that barely fit their own families. I found a place, she lied gently. It's not fancy, but it'll keep us warm and dry. The place turned out to be an overpass 6 blocks away, a concrete structure that provided some shelter from wind and weather. Emma had seen other homeless people camping there before and had always thought she'd never end up in such a situation. Yet here she was, arranging their bags against the wall to create a makeshift bed, using their clothes as blankets for Sophia. Why don't you try to sleep, baby? I'll keep watch and make sure we're safe. Sophia curled up in Emma's lap, still clutching her teddy bear. I'm scared. I know, sweet girl, but your grandma is right here, and I'm not going anywhere. I promise. Emma wrapped her arms around the child and started humming an old gospel song, the same one her own mother had sung to her when times were hard. As Sophia's breathing finally evened out into sleep, Emma stared up at the underside of the overpass and let her own tears fall silently. She thought about Ethan Morrison and wondered if her sacrifice had been worth it, if he'd made it home safely, if that $85 had solved his problem or just created new ones. She hoped he was somewhere warm right now, somewhere safe with a full belly and a soft bed. She hoped her suffering meant something. The night stretched on endlessly. Emma didn't sleep, keeping watch as promised, her back against the cold concrete and Sophia's small weight warm in her arms. Other homeless people drifted past but left them alone. Cars drove overhead, their tires creating a constant rumbling that made actual rest impossible. Emma's joints ached and her stomach cramped with hunger, but she stayed still and kept singing softly that old hymn about faith and grace and the Lord providing. When dawn finally broke gray and cold, Emma carefully shifted Sophia off her lap and stood up on shaky legs. Her entire body protested the movement after sitting in one position all night. She looked down at her sleeping granddaughter and made a silent vow she would find a way out of this. She would get them somewhere safe. She wouldn't let this child grow up on the streets like she nearly had. But first, they needed to survive today, and tomorrow, and all the days after that, until something changed. Emma dug through her coat pockets one more time, hoping to find a forgotten bill or even some loose change, but came up with nothing. She looked at Sophia, still asleep against the concrete wall, and knew she couldn't wake the child up to another day of uncertainty without at least trying to find help. She remembered Grace Henderson, her best friend from 20 years ago, back when they'd both worked at the textile factory before it closed down. Grace had moved to the next city over to live with her son, and Emma had lost touch with her. But desperate times called for reaching out to old connections, no matter how tenuous. Emma sold her wedding ring at a pawn shop for $23, a fraction of what it was worth, but enough for 2 bus tickets. She woke Sophia gently, and they made their way to the station, riding for 2 hours to reach the address Emma barely remembered. When they finally found the house, Emma's heart sank at how small and run down it looked. Grace probably couldn't help them any more than they could help themselves. But Grace opened the door, and her weathered face broke into a smile of recognition. Emma Williams, Lord have mercy, is that really you? She pulled Emma into a hug before either of them could think better of it. Over cups of weak tea, Emma explained their situation, trying to keep her voice steady and her dignity intact. Grace listened with tears in her eyes, then shook her head slowly. Emma, I wish I could help you more, but I'm moving next week. My son got a job 3 states over, and he's taking me with him. I've already given notice on this place. Emma's hope deflated. I understand. It was foolish of me to come here anyway. Wait now. Grace stood up and disappeared into the back room, returning with a key. I paid rent on this place through the end of next year. The landlord was giving me a deal for paying in advance, helping me save up to move, but I'm leaving early, so the place is just going to sit empty. She pressed the key into Emma's hand. It's yours. 1 year paid in full. It's not much, but it's a roof, and it's safe. Emma stared at the key, unable to process what was happening. Grace, I can't. This is too much. You can, and you will. You remember 15 years back when my mama got sick. I didn't have money for her medicine, and you sold your cell phone to help me buy it. You said it was nothing that phones could be replaced, but mothers couldn't. Well, I never forgot that, Emma. I never forgot how you gave me what you had when you barely had anything yourself." "This is me paying that forward." Emma broke down crying, pulling Grace into another hug, while Sophia watched with wide, hopeful eyes. "Thank you. Oh God, thank you." The house was small, just 2 bedrooms, a cramped kitchen, and a bathroom with temperamental plumbing, but it was theirs for a full year. Emma found work cleaning houses, cobbling together enough income to keep them fed. Sophia enrolled in the local school. They survived day by day, month by month, year by year. 15 years passed like water through fingers, sometimes rushing by in a blur, sometimes crawling with painful slowness. Emma aged, her hair turning completely white, her joints growing stiffer, her energy waning. But Sophia grew up strong and smart, graduating high school with honors and earning a scholarship to the state university. Emma stood in the crowd at Sophia's graduation, tears of pride streaming down her face as her granddaughter walked across that stage to receive her diploma. Sophia had beaten the odds, had risen above their circumstances through sheer determination and intelligence. Emma had kept them afloat long enough for this miracle to happen. But after graduation came the harsh reality of the job market. Sophia sent out hundreds of applications and went to dozens of interviews, only to be met with rejection after rejection. Companies wanted experience she didn't have, or they wanted someone with connections she'd never had access to. Her degree, earned with so much sacrifice, seemed worthless in the face of a system designed to keep people like her on the outside. After 6 months of fruitless searching, Sophia came home one day with tears in her eyes. "Grandma, I'm sorry. I know you sacrificed everything for me to go to school, but I can't find anything. Nobody wants to hire me." Emma pulled her grown granddaughter into her arms, just like she'd done when Sophia was 7 years old and scared. "Don't you apologize. You did everything right. The world's just hard sometimes, baby, but we'll figure something out. We always do." So, Sophia started helping Emma sell tomatoes at the farmer's market, using her business degree to help price things better and manage inventory. It wasn't what either of them had dreamed of, but it was honest work, and it kept them going. They set up their little stand every day, calling out to customers, arranging their vegetables to look appealing, making every dollar stretch as far as it could go. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Ethan Morrison had grown into everything Emma had hoped for that day 15 years ago. The $2 million lottery win had transformed his mother's life, allowing her to leave Frank permanently, buy a real home, and invest wisely. She'd put money away for Ethan's education, and he'd used it well, graduating from business school and starting his own company. By his 10 years past, Ethan had built a successful real estate development firm. He was handsome, confident, and wealthy, but he'd never forgotten the lesson Emma Williams had taught him that desperate afternoon. He donated regularly to homeless shelters and scholarship funds, always remembering that he'd once been the desperate kid who needed help. But despite all his success and all his searching, he'd never found Emma. He'd hired private investigators, put ads in newspapers, even returned to that old farmer's market dozens of times. It was like she'd vanished from the earth entirely, and the weight of that unpaid debt haunted him. He wanted to find her, to tell her what her kindness had meant, to repay her 1,000 times over. But the years kept passing, and she remained lost. Margaret Morrison, now living comfortably in a beautiful home, still thought about Emma Williams every single day. She kept that crumpled $85 receipt in a frame in her bedroom as a reminder of what real sacrifice looked like. Sometimes she'd hold it and cry, overwhelmed by gratitude and guilt in equal measure. The universe, in its mysterious way, was slowly pulling all these lives back toward a single point of convergence. Emma and Sophia were still struggling, but surviving, selling tomatoes at their small market stand. Ethan was successful, but incomplete, searching for the woman who'd changed his life. And Margaret was comfortable but restless, wanting desperately to make things right. All of them were waiting, though they didn't know it for the moment, when their paths would cross again, and everything would finally come full circle. Margaret Morrison pulled her silver Mercedes into the farmer's market parking lot on a crisp Tuesday morning, making a mental list of what she needed. Fresh tomatoes for the dinner party she was hosting next week, some organic greens, maybe those artisan breads her son Ethan loved. The market near her upscale neighborhood was convenient, but she preferred this one across town. The produce was fresher, and the prices reminded her to stay grounded despite the wealth she'd accumulated over the past 15 years. She walked through the morning crowd with her designer handbag tucked under her arm, stopping at various stalls to examine the offerings. The autumn sun felt good on her face, and for once, she wasn't thinking about business or charity events or the 100 other things that filled her days. She was just a woman buying groceries, enjoying a peaceful morning. Margaret was examining some heirloom tomatoes when she stepped backward to let another customer pass and felt her foot land in a puddle hidden behind a crate. Her heel caught on the uneven pavement, and there was a sharp crack. Looking down in dismay, she saw that the heel of her expensive pump had snapped clean off. She stood there awkwardly balanced on one good shoe and one broken one her car 3 rows away across rough cobblestones. Other shoppers flowed around her without stopping, everyone absorbed in their own errands. Margaret felt a flash of helpless frustration, such a small problem, but enough to completely derail her morning. "Ma'am, hold on, let me help you." Margaret looked up to see a young black woman hurrying toward her from a nearby vegetable stand. She was probably in her early 20s, wearing simple jeans and a faded university t-shirt, but there was something striking about her, an energy, an intelligence in her bright eyes, a warmth in her smile that was immediately appealing. The young woman knelt down right there on the dirty market ground without hesitation, examining the broken shoe with focused attention. "Okay, this is definitely fixable, at least temporarily." She pulled a hair tie off her wrist and used it to secure the heel, then looked up with an apologetic smile. "That'll get you a few steps, but hold on. There's a shoe repair place just over there. Let me grab some proper glue." Before Margaret could protest, the young woman jogged across the market, spoke briefly to someone at a small repair shop, and came back with a tube of industrial adhesive. She knelt down again, carefully applying the glue with steady hands that suggested she'd fixed plenty of things in her life. Margaret watched this stranger work, noticing the calluses on those young hands, the way her clothes were clean but worn from many washings, the unconscious efficiency of someone who'd learned to solve problems with whatever was available. "You really don't have to go to all this trouble," Margaret said. "It's no trouble at all." The young woman held the heel in place, counting under her breath to let the glue set. "There we go. That should hold, but I'd give it a day before you wear these again. Let the adhesive fully cure." She stood up and brushed off her knees, smiling with obvious satisfaction at a job well done. Margaret pulled out her wallet. "Please let me pay you for your time and the glue." The young woman laughed and waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, no, ma'am. I couldn't take your money for something like this. My grandmother always taught me that helping people is its own reward. You don't charge someone for basic kindness." Something about the way she said it, the genuine belief in those words, the unconscious echo of values that seemed increasingly rare in the world, touched Margaret deeply. "Your grandmother sounds like a wonderful person." "She is. She's the most amazing person I know." The young woman's entire face lit up with obvious love. "She raised me by herself and taught me everything that matters. How to be strong, how to be kind, how to work hard and never give up." Margaret found herself genuinely curious about this bright, kind young woman who'd appeared out of nowhere to help her. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Sophia, ma'am." "Sophia Williams." "It's nice to meet you, Sophia. I'm Margaret Morrison." She paused, studying the young woman more carefully. There was something impressive about her, the way she carried herself with quiet confidence, the intelligence evident in her eyes, the natural warmth she projected. "Can I ask what you do? Are you in school?" "I actually just graduated from State University with a business degree." Sophia's smile faltered slightly. "I've been looking for work for about 6 months now, but so far, no luck. So I help my grandmother sell vegetables here at the market while I keep searching." Margaret felt a spark of interest. She'd been thinking for months about hiring a personal assistant, someone to help manage her increasingly complex schedule of charity work, property management, and social obligations. Her current system of scattered notes and missed appointments was becoming untenable. "A business degree. That's impressive. What kind of work are you looking for?" "Honestly, anything that would let me use my education. Office management, executive assistance, project coordination. I'm not picky." Sophia laughed a little self-consciously. "Most places say I don't have enough experience, or they just stop responding after the interview. I think sometimes they see my address and make assumptions." The frustration in Sophia's voice was subtle, but real, and Margaret recognized it. She'd been there once, back before the lottery win, back when doors closed based on where you came from rather than what you could do. She made a decision that felt both spontaneous and completely right. "Sophia, I need a personal assistant. Someone organized, reliable, and capable. I manage several properties, coordinate multiple charity projects, and host frequent events. I need someone who can keep me on track." Margaret pulled out her business card. "Based on this conversation, I think you might be exactly what I'm looking for. Would you be interested in coming by tomorrow morning to discuss the position? We can talk about responsibilities, salary, all the details." Sophia's eyes went wide with shock. "Are you serious? You'd hire me just like that? I'm a pretty good judge of character, and I can tell you're smart, hardworking, and kind. Those are the qualities that matter most to me." Margaret smiled. "Besides, you just helped a stranger without expecting anything in return. That tells me a lot about who you are." Sophia's hands trembled slightly as she took the business card, her eyes filling with tears she tried to blink away. "Thank you. Thank you so much, Mrs. Morrison. You have no idea how much this means. I promise I won't let you down." "I believe you. Come by at 9 tomorrow morning. The address is on the card." Margaret squeezed Sophia's hand warmly. "And Sophia, thank you for helping me today. You didn't have to, but you did. That says everything." They exchanged phone numbers and confirmed the details. As Sophia hurried back to her grandmother's vegetable stand, Margaret watched her go with a feeling of deep satisfaction. She'd helped someone who needed it, someone who deserved a chance. It felt good in a way that had nothing to do with her usual charitable donations or fundraising events. This was personal, direct, meaningful. Margaret tested her repaired shoe carefully, finding it held perfectly, and continued her shopping. She didn't know that the young woman she'd just hired was the granddaughter of Emma Williams, the woman who changed her life 15 years ago. She didn't know that her own son would soon fall in love with Sophia. She didn't know that the universe was weaving together threads that would eventually form a complete and perfect circle. She was just a woman who'd received help from a kind stranger and had offered help in return. Sometimes that was all it took for miracles to begin. Sophia ran back to the vegetable stand where Emma was arranging tomatoes, her heart pounding with excitement and disbelief. "Grandma, Grandma, you won't believe what just happened." Emma looked up with concern. "What's wrong, baby? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Nothing's wrong, everything's right. I just helped this woman fix her broken shoe, and we started talking, and she offered me a job." The words tumbled out in a rush. "A real job, Grandma, as her personal assistant, with actual salary and benefits and everything." Emma set down the tomato she'd been holding, her weathered face breaking into a smile of pure joy. "A job, oh, sweet girl, that's wonderful, tell me everything." They sat together on the crates behind their stand as Sophia recounted the whole story. The broken shoe, the kind woman named Margaret Morrison, the conversation that had led to a job offer. Emma listened with tears gathering in her eyes, one hand pressed to her heart. "This is what I've been praying for," Emma said softly. "For you to get a chance to be able to use that education we worked so hard for. This is an answer to prayer, baby." "I start tomorrow morning. I'm going to her house to discuss everything." Sophia squeezed her grandmother's hands. "Things are going to get better now, Grandma. I can feel it. I'm going to make good money, and we can finally stop struggling so hard." Emma pulled her granddaughter into a tight embrace. "I'm so proud of you. Not because of this job, but because of who you are. You helped that woman without thinking twice about it, just like I taught you. You've got a good heart, Sophia. That's worth more than any degree." "I learned from the best." Sophia held on tight, feeling the thinness of her grandmother's frame, the way years of hard work had worn her down. But there was still strength there, still that unbreakable spirit that had carried them through everything. That evening, Sophia carefully ironed her best blouse for the next day's meeting, while Emma sat at their small kitchen table, offering advice about professional behavior and making good impressions. Neither of them knew that this simple job opportunity was actually the beginning of something much bigger, that invisible threads were pulling their lives toward a reunion and redemption they couldn't yet imagine. Emma went to bed that night with gratitude overflowing in her heart. After so many years of struggle, of wondering if her sacrifices meant anything here, was evidence that goodness did come back around. Her granddaughter was getting a real chance. That was all she'd ever wanted. Across the city, Margaret prepared her home office for Sophia's arrival the next morning, feeling unusually excited about this new arrangement. She didn't typically make hiring decisions so quickly, but something about Sophia had resonated with her. The young woman reminded her of herself years ago, struggling, but not broken hopeful, despite disappointment, kind despite hardship. It felt right. It felt like the beginning of something good. and in ways none of them could see. Yet it absolutely was. Sophia's first few weeks working for Margaret Morrison passed in a focused blur. She arrived early, stayed late, and threw herself into organizing Margaret's chaotic schedule with determination. The work was exactly what she dreamed of: challenging, professional, meaningful. Margaret's home was comfortable and elegant, and more importantly, Margaret herself was kind and appreciative. It was on a Monday afternoon, 3 weeks into her employment, when Ethan Morrison walked into his mother's office carrying a stack of contracts. Sophia looked up from the filing cabinet and their eyes met. He was tall and handsome, in an expensive suit, probably around her age, with dark hair and an easy confidence that suggested someone comfortable in his own skin. "Mom, I brought those documents you wanted to review." He stopped mid-stride when he saw Sophia, his expression shifting from casual to focused. Margaret appeared behind him, smiling. "Perfect timing. Ethan, this is Sophia Williams, my new assistant. Sophia, my son Ethan. He runs a real estate development company." "Nice to meet you." Sophia extended her hand professionally, trying to ignore the unexpected flutter in her chest. Ethan took her hand, his grip warm and firm. "The pleasure's mine. My mother says you've already transformed her entire organizational system. I'm just doing my job." Sophia gently extracted her hand, feeling oddly flustered. Over the following weeks, Ethan found reasons to stop by his mother's house with increasing frequency. He always had legitimate business contracts to drop off, matters to discuss, but the truth was harder to deny. He was drawn to Sophia in a way he'd never experienced. She wasn't like the women he typically met at business functions. Those women were polished and sophisticated, but often seemed more interested in his bank account than in him. Sophia was different. She treated him with friendly professionalism, never fawning or flirting. She was confident despite coming from obvious hardship, and that confidence was magnetic. Ethan started timing his visits for late afternoon when Sophia would still be working. He'd find excuses to linger and start conversations. He learned she loved historical fiction, was fiercely devoted to her grandmother, and had dreams of starting her own event planning business someday. He discovered she was funny and sharp-witted, with strong opinions on everything from politics to coffee. Sophia found herself looking forward to Ethan's visits more than she wanted to admit. She'd dated before, but those had been men from her own world who understood struggle. Ethan came from privilege, had probably never wondered where his next meal would come from. By all logic, they should have nothing in common, but somehow they did. Ethan listened when she talked about her grandmother with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions. He didn't treat her like an employee or someone beneath him. He talked about his business challenges, his hopes for his company, his frustrations with superficial social circles. He was real with her in a way that suggested he didn't get to be real very often. Margaret observed it all with quiet delight, seeing her son nervous and eager in ways she'd never witnessed before. 2 months into Sophia's employment, Margaret asked her to help with evening events, charity galas, and dinner parties, where extra organizational help would be invaluable. This meant more proximity between Sophia and Ethan, and the tension between them only intensified. One evening, Sophia was working late organizing RSVPs when Ethan arrived with takeout food. "Mom mentioned you'd be here late. Thought you might be hungry." He held up bags from a Thai restaurant. "I got a variety since I didn't know what you liked." Sophia looked at the food, then at him, warmth spreading through her chest. "You didn't have to do that. I wanted to." He set the bags down. "Take a break. You've been at this for hours." They sat in Margaret's kitchen, sharing pad thai and curry conversation flowing easily between laughter and comfortable silences. At some point, Sophia looked up and found Ethan watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "What?" she asked softly. "I'm thinking about how much I enjoy spending time with you." Ethan set down his fork, his expression serious. "Sophia, I know this is complicated. You work for my mother, and there are professional boundaries, but I have to be honest. I'm falling for you. Have been since the day we met." Sophia's heart hammered. "Ethan, we're from completely different worlds. You grew up with everything, and I grew up with nothing. People would talk. I don't care what people say." Ethan leaned forward. "I've dated women from my world with the right pedigree and connections. None of them made me feel even a fraction of what I feel with you. You're real. You're brilliant and kind and strong. You make me want to be better." "This is crazy," Sophia whispered. "Maybe. But if you feel something too..." He reached across the table and took her hand gently. "I'm just asking if you feel it. If you don't tell me, and I'll back off. But if you do..." I do. The admission came out barely audible. I've been trying not to, but I do. You're thoughtful and genuine. When you talk about your dreams, your eyes light up in this way that's... She stopped shaking her head. But this is complicated. Your mother is my employer. And beyond that, my grandmother and I were homeless 15 years ago. We lived under a highway overpass. That's how different our worlds are. Then tell me about it. Ethan squeezed her hand. Tell me everything. I want to know. So Sophia told him. About Emma's sacrifices, the years of struggle, eating from dumpsters and sleeping in shelters, working through school, while helping her grandmother sell vegetables. She watched his face for judgment or pity, but found only respect. Your grandmother sounds extraordinary, Ethan said quietly. And so are you. Everything you've overcome, that's not something to be ashamed of. That's something to be proud of. Most people don't see it that way. Then most people are idiots. Ethan stood and pulled her gently to her feet. I know this is complicated and scary, but I'm asking you to take a chance. Let me take you to dinner. Let's see where this goes. Sophia's heart and head warred, but her heart was louder. Okay, yes, let's see where this goes. Ethan's face broke into a transformative smile. He lifted her hand and kissed it softly. You won't regret this. Over the next 4 months, they built something real. Ethan took Sophia to restaurants she'd never afford, but also went to the small Ethiopian place in her neighborhood she loved. He attended poetry readings at her library because she loved them. Sophia went to business dinners and charity galas, learning to navigate rooms full of wealthy people, while Ethan never left her side. They fell in love slowly and completely. Margaret watched with joy, seeing her son happier than he'd been in years. One rainy afternoon while returning from an errand, traffic was heavy, and a distracted driver ran a red light heading straight for them. Ethan swerved hard, his arm instinctively protecting Sophia, as the car spun before he regained control on the shoulder. They sat there breathing hard, rain hammering the roof. Ethan's arm was still across Sophia. He turned to her, his face pale. Are you okay? I'm fine, you saved us. Their eyes met. The rain created a cocoon of sound around them. Ethan leaned across and kissed her, not the gentle kisses they'd shared before, but something deeper, more urgent. Sophia responded immediately, kissing him back with equal intensity. When they pulled apart, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. I love you. I'm completely in love with you, Sophia Williams. I love your strength and your kindness and everything about you. I love you too. Sophia's voice broke. You make me feel safe and seen in ways I've never felt before. Then stay with me. Build a life with me. He looked into her eyes. I know it's fast and there are challenges, but I don't care. I want you. For real. For always. Sophia kissed him again, softer. Yes, I want that too. When they returned to Margaret's house, still damp and glowing, Margaret took one look and smiled. I suppose there's something you want to tell me. Mom, I'm in love with Sophia, Ethan said, simply, his arm around her. I know she works for you, but I needed you to know. I've known for months. Margaret hugged them both. And I couldn't be happier. Sophia's already like family. This makes it official. That evening, Sophia told Emma everything about Ethan, who he was, how they'd met, how much she loved him. Emma listened with tears in her eyes. He makes you happy, baby. So happy, Grandma. Then that's all that matters. Love is precious. When you find it, you hold on tight. Neither of them knew that soon the universe would reveal connections. They couldn't imagine that Emma's sacrifice from 15 years ago would come back to bless them all. 6 months into their relationship, Ethan knew what he wanted. I need to meet your grandmother properly, he told Sophia one evening. I want to sit down with her and tell her how much I love you and ask for her blessing. You want to ask my grandmother for permission? Sophia was touched. Ethan, we're adults. I know. But she's the most important person in your life. She raised you, sacrificed everything for you. I want her blessing because it matters. Ethan took her hands. I want to start our life with her approval. She's going to grill you, Sophia warned with a smile. Good, she should. You're precious and deserve someone willing to prove themselves worthy. They set the meeting for Saturday. Emma cleaned and cooked despite Sophia's protests, wearing her best dress and baking sweet potato pie. She was nervous knowing how much this man meant to her granddaughter. Ethan spent an hour getting ready, changing shirts 3 times. He bought flowers, wine, and chocolates, then worried it was too much before deciding to keep everything. When Saturday arrived, Ethan and Sophia drove to the small house Emma and Sophia shared. His heart pounded the entire way. Breathe. Sophia squeezed his hand. She's going to love you. Emma opened the door, a woman in her 60s with white hair pulled in a neat bun, her face lined with years of hard work, but her eyes sharp and kind. There was dignity in how she carried herself that spoke of inner strength. "Grandma, this is Ethan Morrison. Ethan, my grandmother, Emma Williams." Ethan extended his hand. "It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Williams. Sophia talks about you constantly." Emma shook his hand firmly, studying him carefully. "Call me Miss Emma. Come in and sit down." They settled in the small, spotless living room. Ethan noticed the signs of genteel poverty, old but well-maintained furniture, an outdated television, mismatched frames. But there were fresh flowers, well-read books, and an atmosphere of warmth money couldn't buy. Emma brought lemonade and pie, then sat across from them. "So, Ethan Morrison, Sophia tells me you run a real estate company." "Yes, ma'am. Commercial development mostly." Ethan took a breath. "But Miss Emma, before we talk about me, I need to say something. Your granddaughter is the most extraordinary person I've ever met. Her intelligence, kindness, strength, all of that comes from you, from how you raised her. I see that, and I respect it deeply." Emma's expression softened. "She is extraordinary. Always has been. Smart and kind since she was little. You made her that way. I just tried not to mess it up too badly." Emma paused. "Tell me about your family." Ethan told her everything. About his father leaving his mother, struggling, the abusive stepfather, the desperate years before things changed. He was honest about his privileged life now, but clear about understanding hardship. Emma listened carefully. When he finished, she asked, "What are your intentions toward my granddaughter?" Ethan had expected this. He leaned forward, looking Emma in the eye. "I love her. I want to marry her, build a life with her, support her dreams. I want to be the partner she deserves." "And what kind of partner does she deserve?" "Someone who sees her for who she truly is. Someone who appreciates her strength without taking advantage. Someone who understands where she comes from and respects her journey. Someone who will stand beside her through whatever comes." Ethan's voice was steady. "I know I come from privilege now, Miss Emma, but I see her as my equal in every way that matters. I don't want to rescue or change her. I just want to love her." Emma studied him, then turned to Sophia. "And you, baby, he makes you happy." "So happy, Grandma. He treats me with respect and kindness. He listens, values my opinions, supports my dreams." The silence stretched. Then Emma spoke. "I've raised this child from when she was tiny. She's everything to me. When I give you my blessing, I'm trusting you with the most precious thing in my life. I understand. I won't let you down. See that you don't." But Emma was smiling. "Now come here and give me a hug. Any man who loves my granddaughter like you do is family." Ethan embraced Emma. "Thank you, Miss Emma. This means everything." The afternoon passed in warm conversation. When Ethan stood to use the bathroom, Sophia showed him down the hall. Coming back, he noticed framed photos on the wall. One made him stop, a younger Emma with a bright smile standing next to a small market stand with a sign reading "Fresh Tomatoes." His heart started pounding. He stared at the photo, mind racing. A tomato stand. Emma Williams. An older black woman who'd raised Sophia alone, who'd known poverty and struggle. He walked back to the living room on unsteady legs. "Miss Emma, you used to sell vegetables at the farmer's market." Emma looked surprised. "Yes, for many years." "How did you know?" "There's a photo in the hall. You're at a tomato stand." His voice sounded strange. "Was that near Riverside Elementary about 15 years ago?" Emma's expression shifted, cautious. "Yes, though I lost that spot long ago." "Why?" Ethan felt the ground tilt. His hands shook, and he sat down. "Did you help a boy at that market 15 years ago, a white kid about 19 who'd lost his tuition money?" Emma went completely still, eyes widening. Sophia looked between them in confusion. "What's going on?" Emma stood slowly, hand pressed to her chest, staring at Ethan. "That boy's name was Ethan. Ethan Morrison." Her voice was barely a whisper. "He was crying and scared, and I gave him all my money. $85. Everything I had." "Oh my God." Sophia's hand flew to her mouth. "Ethan, that was you. You're the boy she told me about." Ethan couldn't speak. Tears streamed down his face as 15 years of searching crashed into this impossible moment. He dropped to his knees in front of Emma. "I've been searching for you for 15 years. Every day, I've thought about you, about what you did for me." His voice broke. "You gave me everything when I was desperate. You told me to study hard and be good, and I promised I'd never forget you. I didn't. I never forgot." Emma's hands shook as she cupped his face. "Little Ethan, look at you now. Look at this man you've become. Because of you." He grabbed her hands. "Everything good in my life comes back to what you did. My mother and I were going to be homeless that night, but because you helped me, we got a miracle. A stranger gave my mother a lottery ticket that won $2 million. Our entire lives changed, and it started with you." Sophia was crying, watching the reunion. Emma pulled Ethan up and embraced him tightly, both sobbing. "I never regretted it," Emma whispered. "Not once. Even when I lost everything, I never regretted helping you. It meant everything." Ethan pulled back to look at her. "You taught me what real kindness looks like. And now, by some miracle, the woman I love is your granddaughter, the woman you raised with that same beautiful heart." Emma looked at Sophia, then Ethan, tears streaming. "This isn't coincidence. This is divine intervention." They held each other and cried, the weight of 15 years finally lifting. When they pulled apart, Ethan knew what he had to do. "My mother's been searching just as hard as I have. She needs to meet you. And I need to do something I've been planning for 15 years, making things right, repaying your sacrifice the way it deserves." His voice was fierce. "You gave everything when you had nothing. Now it's my turn." 1 week later, Ethan and Margaret stood outside Emma's house, both nervous. Margaret had cried for an hour when Ethan called with the news. Now, about to meet the woman who'd saved her son, her heart pounded. Sophia opened the door smiling. "Come in. Grandma's so excited." Margaret walked inside and saw Emma stand, both women's eyes filling with tears. They looked at each other, two mothers who'd known desperate poverty, connected by an act of kindness that had rippled through 15 years. Margaret walked forward and dropped to her knees. "Forgive me for not finding you sooner, for not being there when you lost everything, because you saved my son." "Sweet girl, get up." Emma pulled her to her feet and into a tight embrace. "There's nothing to forgive. Look at us now." They cried while Ethan and Sophia stood watching. Margaret pulled back and took Emma's face in her hands. "You saved us. Because of you, everything changed. And because of that miracle, you raised a son good enough for my granddaughter." Emma smiled through tears. "God works mysteriously." They talked for hours. Margaret told Emma about the lottery, leaving Frank building a new life. Emma told Margaret about the years of struggle, sleeping under overpasses, fighting to give Sophia opportunities. Finally, Ethan stood and pulled an envelope from his jacket. "Miss Emma, 15 years ago, you gave me $85, everything you had. My mother and I have been putting money aside for 15 years. He handed her the envelope. "This is the Emma Williams Blessing Fund. $200,000. It's yours." Emma opened it with trembling fingers, staring at the bank statement. "Ethan, I can't. This is too much. You deserve it." He pulled out another envelope. "You gave me a home when mine was taken. Now I'm giving you one back." Emma opened it to find a deed, a real house paid in full in her name. 5 bedrooms, beautiful garden 3 blocks from my mother's. Completely paid off. It's yours and Sophia's. No one can ever take it from you." Emma stared, unable to speak. Sophia gasped, reading over her shoulder. "Why?" Emma whispered, "Because you taught me kindness matters more than anything." Ethan knelt, taking her hands. "You showed me what real love looks like, and somehow the universe brought me to your granddaughter. I'm in love with her. I want to marry her. And I want you in our life, in a home where you never worry again." Emma pulled Ethan close, sobbing. Margaret joined them, then Sophia, all four holding each other. It was a moment of profound grace, the closing of a 15-year circle. 2 weeks later, they moved Emma into her new home. Margaret had furnished every room. As Emma walked through touching walls and crying happy tears, 15 years of struggle lifted from her shoulders. 3 months later, Ethan proposed in Emma's garden with both grandmothers watching. Sophia said yes through tears. The wedding was perfect autumn day. Beautiful church Emma in the front row, wearing a gorgeous dress Margaret bought, looking regal and proud. When Ethan and Sophia were pronounced husband and wife, everyone erupted in joy. At the reception, Ethan's toast left everyone crying. 15 years ago, a woman I'd never met gave me everything because she believed kindness mattered more than self-preservation. That grace changed my life. It led me to this moment, married to the most incredible woman who happens to be that kind woman's granddaughter. Miss Emma, you taught me what real goodness looks like. Thank you for that day. Thank you for raising Sophia. Thank you for being exactly who you are." Emma stood, and the room stood with her in ovation. Sophia embraced her grandmother, both laughing and crying. A year later, Sophia gave birth to twins Grace and Morrison. Emma held those babies and felt complete. She was no longer the desperate woman under a bridge. She was a grandmother and great-grandmother surrounded by love and security. She had a beautiful home, financial stability, and the knowledge that her one act of kindness had transformed 4 lives. On quiet evenings, Emma rocked the twins while Sophia and Ethan gardened their laughter carrying on the breeze. Margaret visited often, and they'd gather around Emma's table for dinners that felt like home. One evening, Sophia sat beside Emma on the porch. "That day, 15 years ago, when you gave away your last dollar, if you hadn't, none of this would exist." Emma smiled, squeezing her hand. "I made a choice. Keep the money and protect myself, or help a child who needed it more. I chose kindness, even though it cost me everything." She looked at Ethan, pushing the twins on their swing. "And God gave me back everything I lost, multiplied 1,000 times. That's how it works. When you give from your heart, even when it hurts, the universe repays you." "Do you ever regret it?" "Not once." Emma's voice was firm. "Not when I lost my stall, not sleeping under that overpass, not during the hard years, because I'd done right by that boy. Look what came of it." Ethan joined them, carrying both twins. He sat with Sophia as Margaret arrived, and they all watched twilight descend, talking and laughing and being together. Emma looked around at these beloved faces and felt profound gratitude. She'd given $85 to a desperate child, and the universe had given her a family security joy and proof that her kindness mattered. The circle was complete. The debt was paid. Love had won. As stars appeared, Emma closed her eyes and whispered thanks. For Ethan, who'd never forgotten. For Sophia, who made the sacrifice worthwhile. For Margaret, who'd searched until she found them. For the divine hand weaving their lives into something beautiful. She'd lost everything once, but in losing everything, she'd gained proof that goodness begets goodness. That sacrifice yields blessing. That love always finds a way. On this perfect evening, surrounded by family and laughter, Emma finally understood that her act of kindness 15 years ago hadn't just saved a boy's life, it had saved them all.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.